Okay, everybody, we are going to go ahead and construct page 3, and just as a reminder, page 3 is going to be the same as page 6. The only thing that's going to be different is how we install it, and that's going to be based on the way that the book opens. I want this to open away from the spine, so on page 3 it's going to go in this way, and then on page 6 I believe it's going to go in the opposite way. But it doesn't really matter right now because we're not going to actually install it on the pocket page, and I'll tell you why in just a second. So as I pointed out in page 2, page 2 through 7 I built, and I thought I was recording, I wasn't. So I'm going to rebuild this element with my pink cardstock so you'll know how to make it for page 3 and for page 6. So with that, I'm going to show you what it does. It is going to be a pop mechanism. So the pieces that you'll need to construct it is an 8.5 by 6. So this is 8.5 by 6. You're going to score 1/2 inch along the 8.5 inch side. Then you're going to just need a flat piece of 8 by 6. And I accidentally scored. You don't need to do that. 8 by 6. You're going to attach this to the 8 by 6 and make basically an 8 by 6 card. And I'm doing this with 2 pieces of paper because I don't have any paper that is 16 inches wide. If you did, you could just score it in half. So I'm going to sit down and we are going to build this. Whoops, not the pick tool. I don't see where it is. Oh my goodness, I'm always mislaying something. Well, shoot. I'll use something else for the short term. So I don't know how I did it, how I managed to record, build all those pages before I realized that I hadn't hit the record button, but it is what it is. I saved these pink ones and use them for inspiration when I'm building other albums, so I kind of have a whole stash of these that I go back to. This is one that I hadn't built and stored, so even though I've used this element before, I don't have it in my sort of go-to bag when I'm trying to come up with new albums and need a little inspiration. So this is sort of my mock-up bag for my 8x10s. I've got another one just like it for my 8x8s. Okay, so now as you can see, I've added it here, and so basically we have this big card that the finished face of it is 8x6. So now we're going to need one more piece of cardstock, and it is going to measure 9 by 6. So it's 9 inches by 6 inches. You're going to score it 1/2 inch, 4.5, and 8.5. And then you're going to fold these score lines back and do this. So it's going to look like this when you're finished. Now you're going to open your card up. You're going to place the scored edge, the center score, to the edge of the card. You're going to tuck these score flange down, and then you're going to close the book to adhere it, and then when you open it, it'll have that pop mechanism. So I'm going to go ahead and add my tape real quick, and you'll see in just a moment what I'm doing. So if you build this, go ahead and build 2 because it is really not directional. You can turn it around, and then you'll have the one you need for page 6 as well. All right, so that's done. I need to find that pick tool. Here it is. I was just looking right past it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take my tape off one side, and I'm going to place the tape on the downside. So first I'm going to come to the edge and marry this center score line up with the edge, like so. And then I'm going to try to get my fingers out of the way without letting it shift. And so now you can see we've got half of it in. Okay, so now this is the easy part. You take the tape off and you just hold the card in place while you close the flap on it, like so. And that's it. So that's the mechanism for page 3 and page 6. So make 2 of these. And like I said, the only thing that's going to change is whether or not it opens to the left or to the right. We're not going to install this on page 3. here is my page 3. We're not going to install it because it's going to get centered on page 3, and I have to put my designer cardstock in first. So go ahead and build these and then set it aside, and then we're going to decorate the base, and then we'll pull this back in. Okay, does that make sense? All right, so that is it for page 3 and page 6 mechanism. Okay, everybody, let's get started on page 6. So this is what the base of page 6 is going to look like. And then if you'll recall, it's the same as page 3. Actually, it says page 3 on here, but I think I swapped it out for page 3. And it opens like so. So let me think about that. So page 6, the spine is going to be here. So yes, I want it to open away from the spine. And I'm going to double check page 3 real quick. Page 1, 2. As you recall, here's page 3. Two, 3, yes, it is going to open away from the spine. And you know, I'm kind of fussing about it, but it's really not that important. It kind of lays over. If you had it another page over here, it would kind of lay over on it when it's open, but it works either way. But I prefer to have my opening work away from the spine. Okay, so again, like I said, a preference. So this is the mat that's going to go on this pop feature. I've cut out a couple of pieces from one of, it's actually the flip side of this one. There's some, it's a larger image, but there's some images that you can cut apart. And I've cut apart this, and there's another one on the other side. And then there's 2 ladies on the bottom. So I'm cutting apart those elements. Since there are no ephemera cards with the DCEs, I like to use the cut apart pages to kind of mimic where I would put those design features. All right, with that, I'm going to sit down. We're going to get started. As usual, I'm going to lay down my smaller pieces and then trim my largest piece to fit after I get these 2 in. And that is just for ease of use. I think it's much easier to trim a large piece than to try to hold something that's less than 2 inches in my trimmer and keep it from torquing and all the other stuff that happens when you get under 2 inches. I think I'm going to check and make sure these are both the same height. And they are. Okay. All right, I'm happy with that, but I haven't inked it. Actually, I inked 3 out of 4. Not everything. This is actually one of the other cut aparts, but I'm going to use the flip side. It's very pretty. No, see what happens when I start shuffling my paper around? I start changing my mind. I'm like, maybe I would. Not much of it is going to show because this whole design feature is going to lay on top. So probably not a good use of this particular one. Let me see if I've got another piece of this paper that is wide enough. So it looks like I need 1 3/4 inch wide. Something long enough, wide enough that I don't have to use this if I don't have to, in the right pattern. And I don't think I do. I think the next closest thing is this thin one. Either that, oh no, here's one. Yeah, let's use this one. Yeah, that's what I'll do. And that way I can maybe repurpose this someplace else, even if it's just a tag. It's so pretty. All right, so here, getting back to what we were doing, here's what we're gonna do. And like so. And I think these are, yeah, they're actually both the same size. And they're just, both of them are just over 2 inches. It looks like 1 1/8. Now I gotta see if they're the same height. They are not. So, let me see if this is gonna work. It is a little bit shorter, so I'm going to see if I can shorten everything to match. Okay. Let's get this out of the way, make sure I'm in. So I'm just checking top to bottom that they're the same height. I think I'm taking off a 32nd of an inch, just very, very little, to make it all work. Yeah, okay. Okay, we'll ink the edges that we just trimmed. Well, this one, it's a new piece, so the whole thing needs to be inked. Okay, we're going to start with this. Hopefully my glue didn't dry. I forgot to put the cap on. There it goes. Slow but sure. Okay. There we go. Okay, this goes in next. Okay, here's our last piece. It's going to go in like so, and I need to take quite a bit off, so I'm going to use my pencil for this one. I think I still need to take a little more, but I'm just going to test it. Yeah, I don't want to get too short. Okay, now I think I need to take about 1/8 of an inch off. All right, let's see. Okay, let's give this a shot, see how it looks. And I think we're good to go. Yep. Okay, ink. this is color blocking is a great way to add a lot of depth to your book without adding a lot of complexity. Just adding these three pieces together side by side with this slight interruption with the black line through it kind of creates a kind of a collage, so to speak. So even though there's no flaps or mechanisms on it, it looks very interesting. It's not just one solid piece of paper. A lot of times the interest comes from the interactivity, but there's ways around that, and just clever use of patterns is one way to get, you know, a lot of interest on a page, especially if it's a page where you want to feature the photographs and not necessarily the complexity of the mechanisms of the paper. So it's just something to think about as you're planning your albums and thinking ahead to what kind of photos are going to be on the page. If it's a very focal photo, you may want to just do some color blocking on a page and not add any interactivity. Keep it simple and focused on the photos itself. I like both. I like to have kind of a combination of both. That's why on the larger parts of my albums, I tend to do some color blocking, so it's not just a solid pattern paper, that there's some more interest to it. I think I need to scoot that over just a little. Okay, so that's good. So this is my Christmas card. So an example would be, you know, you've got a photo here. I think this is 5x7. Yeah, it is. It's 5x7, a photo here, and then you see this beautiful color blocking behind it, right? So it doesn't really need to have an interactive piece on top of it. But having said all that, the plan is to have this interactive piece, and this is an 8x6 pop-up that we built earlier a few minutes ago, and I'm gonna have it, this is my spine, I'm gonna have it open away from my spine. I'm going to do the same thing I did on page 3, even though this is not page 3, it's page 6. I somehow got my two mechanisms flipped. We are going to only do 3 of the 4 sides and leave the top as a pocket. And, you know, I did that on page 3. And after I glued it down, I wished I had lowered it so that whatever I stuck in the pocket would have a little more space up here. I centered it. And it still has plenty of space. But I wished I had lowered it, and I'm going to go ahead and center this just because I like the idea of symmetry. I'm kind of a big fan of that. If you've watched any of my videos, you'll see that you know, if I do a duplicate page like 3 and 6 are, the only thing that varies is the pattern paper, not the flap designs. So I'm going to stick with that, and I'm going to center it. And I will use my Tim Holtz ruler, which is nice for doing that. And if I recall correctly, I was about 1 inch from the bottom. So I'm gonna double check and see if it's 1 inch both ways. And it is. And it should be, because this is 6 inches and this is 8 inches. So we're gonna come up 1 inch, and I'm getting a little bit of glare, but I think it's mostly in my glasses. I'm gonna add adhesive. Actually, before I do that, let's go ahead and put the top decorative piece on. And it looks like it needs to be trimmed out just a little bit. In both directions. Okay, let's take a look at this. Okay, that looks good. I'm just pressing it all into place. I decided to do it this way because sometimes if you need to shift this paper, trying to do it with this moving and then being on top of there, it makes it a little bit challenging. So now we're going to do 3 of the 4 sides and put it on here evenly spaced. Before you put your bottom glue line on, make sure it's going to open in the direction you want it. If I put it on the glue side there, I'd have to turn the whole thing around. So I'm going to use the grid to help me center it left to right, and I'm using my ruler on the bottom to make sure that I'm coming up 1 inch from the bottom. And it should be 1 inch on either side as well. And I'm off a little bit, but I'm going to leave it. I'm not going to lift it. I should have gone over just a little bit more. But I'm happy with the way it looks. Okay, so I'm going to open it and we're going to make sure these edges are down. And remember, there's a pocket there behind the whole mechanism. So even when you open it, there'll be a pocket back here, okay? And again, I'm not sure I've got enough paper to cover it, but I'll put a photo mat in there one way or another. And then there's one more thing I'm doing for the top. And like I mentioned, I had done these 2 cut aparts. I'm going to lay them here as features. You can leave it blank if you want to put a photo on the very top. But I am planning to do this. So I think these are ready to go. I'm going to ink them and get them glued down. And this is what I would consider an embellishment. This is not normally, I don't usually cover this part in the build process, but they're kind of big and straightforward, so I'm going to go ahead and lay it down. And I just trimmed out black cardstock to be an 1/8 inch shorter and an 1/8 inch taller and wider to make a 1/16 inch border that will match the 1/16 inch border that we have everywhere else in the album. Okay, lovely. So again, I'm going to place that here. You could do both. You could do none. You could feature your own photo here. Lots of options. I'm going to dry fit it real quick. Make sure it's trimmed right. That looks good. it looks like it didn't look quite centered, so I just took a sliver off the very top, and I'm much happier. I'm sure they're not exactly the same size since I hand trimmed them out of the book. So that's actually, I think I was planning on putting it this way so they're kind of facing each other. That is my current plan. I'm actually not ready to glue these in, and I'm going to wait until I've got it side by side with page 7, and then make sure first of all that I like these with it, page 7, and if not, you know, we've got lots of these cut aparts. You got 4 pages of cut aparts. I mean, they're all the same, but this pattern is on the flip side, so we've got lots of these that we can work with during the embellishment phase too. So I'm going to set this aside. I'm assuming I'm going to use these, but I'm not going to lay them in just yet. So the next thing we're going to focus on is getting the designer papers for the inside of the pop-up. And in the meantime, for safekeeping, I will put them right here in the pocket. And who knows, they might stay there. I might decide to do something else here or reserve it for photos. So that's it for now. I'm going to take a break and line these papers up, make sure they're inked, try to do some dry fitting and trimming so you guys don't have to sit through that. I know it's kind of tedious. And then when we get back, like I said, we'll cover the inside of this pop-up. Okay, everybody, here we are with page 6. So as you remember, it's the same as page 3. So we've got this pop mechanism, and we've already got all the A sides done. So we're just here putting in the B side, and this is going to go very fast. I think I've inked everything, but we're going to find out together. And I did make a piece that slides under, like we did on page 3. And it looks like these need to come down just a tiny bit. They're a little too tall. So let's see, I don't know if I want to start with this pattern or start, I think I like the sharp contrast. Okay, this is directional, so pay attention to the palms on the back side. And that's just a tag. That was visually disturbing. It's not quite narrow enough. It was going to get stuck in the hinge. I could see it much better. Okay, so that's one. And then let's do this one. Oh, quite a bit. This one I forgot to trim. It was not trimmed. Okay, now it should fit. Make sure it's the same size as the one next to it. It needs to be a little shorter. Oh, that is too crowded to the hinge again. Sorry, guys. I'm not doing a very good job dry fitting. These are each, they're not quite, but they're basically just under 4 by 6. So you can actually get a full-size photo here. A near full-size photo here. Okay. Set them aside. Okay. Now we're ready for another solid green. Still too dark. Okay, that should do it. And we're good. Just about out of glue. I think I'll get through this album and it'll be time to get some more glue. Okay, and then I've got this piece that is going to fit right in here. And I think it needs to be trimmed down a little. Definitely needs to be trimmed down a lot. Okay. Let's see. Okay, now on inside we've got these two design elements, which I still think I'm going to put on in the embellishment. We've got an insert here for more photo mat space. And for some reason, my magnet's not grabbing. Do I not have an opposing magnet? I think I forgot to put the second magnet on. So don't do what I did. There should be a magnet here on this panel, and there's not. And I think I have enough of this paper. I think I'm going to have to go and carefully lift this off and put a magnet in there. So I don't know how that happened, that I forgot the magnet. But it's definitely not holding. So I am going to try to get under that and put in a magnet. And it is going to have to go in pretty far. So let's see, what is the other option? The other option is to place a magnet here and then put this on top of it, which I think is probably what I'm going to do. It's just easier than tearing the paper. But I don't know how I forgot that, but I know, hopefully you didn't do that. I know I put it in on the first one because it's snapping shut nice and tight. So it's a lot of paper to go through. That is really strange, but I guess I did it. So what do you do? Yeah, I'm gonna put it here. And I'm using an extra large magnet because it's going through more layers. I'm gonna try a medium magnet. Sure doesn't feel very strong. It will do in a pinch. I'm disappointed that I forgot it, but there's always a workaround. So that's what we're gonna do. And I'm just gonna leave it here for the moment, and I will stick it down permanently when I come back to embellish the rest of the album. And I'm looking, I think I've got some temporary tape that I can use to hold that in place. Yeah. That's double-sided. Yeah. So it's just matte removable tape, and I can come back to that after when we're ready to embellish. So that's the end of page 6. And then we've got page 7 coming up in just a few minutes.